Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Rare Air Show, an alternative news network for South Dakotans by South Dakotans. And this evening, we're out here in Rapid City at Freedom Fest. And I'd like to welcome JP to South Dakota for the first time. So welcome, JP.
Thank you, Peter. And I don't think I've ever heard the word South Dakotans, or however you pronounced it. I like it. It's such a joy being here.
Hey, well, we're glad to have you here, and such a great talk that you gave, or a little bit of stand-up mixed with talk here at the Freedom Fest. And grateful for your time this evening, and just wanted to express my gratitude for just your presence. You know, it's great to meet you, and just to see you. It's hard to put it into words exactly, but just your presence means a lot to me, and I appreciate that. So I'll jump into a couple questions, and I don't think you really know anything about the Rare Air Show, but it's the goal is to show gratitude for what we have here in South Dakota, but then also to express concerns that we have about the future. And one of my favorite points from your talk, or one of your favorite lines, which you kind of snuck in there, was that when we're divided, then we're controllable. And that really hit me hard because as a whole, most of us want the same thing, and yet even in a state that's like South Dakota, sometimes it's hard to see eye to eye on some basic things that you think are just sort of a given. So I really loved what you said there, and I just thought you could expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, I wish I could be the wise man, like bringing these concepts to the world for the first time, but it's ancient wisdom. We all know that love unites us and fear divides us. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping people wake up and realizing we've been indoctrinated the past year and a half to fear human connection. And I don't think human connection's bad for us. I think it's the best thing for us. I think it's the thing that enlivens us the most. And I think love is our natural state. That's why we're naturally wanting to connect with other people. Like, you don't see a loved one and then run to the other side of the room. You naturally go towards the loved one. You want to hug. It's our natural state. So when we're afraid, we leave our natural state. We leave the loving state. Now we're functioning under fear. And then we start to get divided because we're afraid of the thing that unites us, human connection. And then when we're divided, we're controllable to whoever it is telling us to be afraid in a way that doesn't serve us. So, we all know, like, the few can't control the many unless the many allow the few to control them. And I think the only way that can happen is through fear. And I don't know, like, who's behind the scenes or whatever's happening, but what I do know is we are better off when we are united. And you mentioned, like, a lot of us want the same thing, but then we can start to fight about how to achieve that same thing. And we start to realize, like, we're actually working against what we want by getting divisive about how we want to get there. So, in the world where just division runs rampant, I mean, cancel culture is so trendy. Like, let's just divide people and kill them, and, screw you. You said something I don't like. But maybe we want the same thing. So I think when we can start to wake up and realize, like, hey, more of us than what we think, more of us than what we realize, we want the same thing. And if we can start uniting on that rather than fighting and therefore dividing ourselves over the little idiosyncrasies about how to achieve that, I think that'll be a cool step forward. Easy to say, but it needs to be said, maybe.
No, I appreciate that very much. And the other goal of this channel is to be a voice for the average hardworking American, in particular South Dakotan out here. So what words of or even advice, how do we support the cause for truth and freedom and liberty when we're so busy just taking care of our families and there's a lot, as a booming economy we have here, so there's a lot of work to be done, but yet I don't want this any agendas that will undercut what we have here to creep in while we're busy working hard. And so any advice you'd have for that?
Well, a couple pieces of advice, and I'm just a delusional redhead, but so I don't know if this advice lands, but here it is. One is, when you're working hard, which I love hard work, I think that shapes people for the better. I'd love to work hard myself. So when we're working hard, feeding our families, caring for our families, spending time with friends, I think it's great to realize that's one of the most ultimate expressions of freedom. So like recognize it and be grateful and realize like, yeah, I'm working hard and feeding the family, but stop and smell the roses and realize like, oh, this is the most beautiful freedom. I'm doing this with my family and for my family. It's great. And then outside of that, I'm a big fan of inviting people to, first off, break the bond of obedience. And I think the world needs more bravery rather than obedience. So we need to follow our heart and follow our gut. And if something doesn't feel right to you, honor that, like whatever that is, not what feels right or wrong to me, but what feels right or wrong to you. And sometimes it can be tempting to betray that. And it's tempting to betray it in the name of being obedient because we get more virtue signaling points, more social credit points. We stand out less, but we need more bravery. So when something doesn't feel right, when we see something that needs to be voiced, I think the world needs us to go there. And you have a voice. You're doing this show. This is what the world needs. Bravery, not obedience. And we all have a voice. And I think we have a voice for a reason. God gives us a voice in order to use it to voice our perspectives, not to parrot the narrative, but the narrative doesn't come from you. We all need to author our own narrative. So, I think speaking up, being brave, and it's one thing to have awareness, then it's another thing to speak up, then it's another thing to take action. You're doing a show, that's taking action, whatever the action might be for a person. But bravery is the currency that fuels us along that journey of becoming aware, having a voice, and then acting. So that for me is the 3-pronged recipe. And we might say the next question is like, cool, like what do we need to act on? And I think you're the only person that can answer that. Like what seems most important to you? If you see challenges that are potentially threatening a beautiful way of life here, then the challenges you see, that's maybe what needs your awareness, your voice, and your actions.
Beautiful. That's really, really good. I appreciate that. And sort of to build on that, a lot of the times I think it's a feeling of being the only one or alone that can prevent us from having the courage to take those actions. And I know in your talk you mentioned just traveling around the country during these crazy times, and you were just talking about we're the majority.
Yeah, we're freedom-minded people who, by the way, were not represented on the mainstream media. So let's just get that clear. So freedom-minded people, my experience of traveling the country is we are the majority. You might say, oh, no, JP, I watch CNN. People are compliant. And, the freedom-minded people, those are the crazy extremists. Not only are there a few of them, but they're nuts. My experience is freedom-minded people are the most sane, loving people, and we are the majority. The powers that be, whoever the hell they are, but whoever the hell wants to control other people, God help them. Please pray for them. They probably very wounded people inside, but they don't want us to know we're the majority, because you can control people by making them feel ashamed, lonely, and like they're the only one. That's one of the reasons why abuse victims stay quiet. They have unfortunate abuse happen to them, whether it's in their childhood or adulthood. And one of the reasons why some abuse victims either never speak out or take decades to speak out is because they feel like they're the only one. They feel all alone, and feeling like you're the only one, that evokes a natural feeling of shame. Not that that's deserved shame, but it's just sort of like the natural, it's under the illusion I'm alone, I'm the only one, therefore we feel ashamed. But part of the therapy is you start to connect with like-minded people and you realize like, oh, no, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who've been through this same level of abuse. There's a lot of people that think just like us. There's not only a lot, but there's the majority of people are freedom-minded. I mean, here's the stats on freedom-minded people. 100% of people are born with God-given freedom. And then some people just get hypnotized into a state of fear where they forget that. So 100% of people they carry freedom, but who's awake to it and free-minded, that's even the majority.
I'm really enjoying this, and I have to say, just watching you with the question and answer session earlier, it's really there's a lot that you bring of not only just it's just a neat perspective to see it of not only the comedy but just your really deep thinking on these important issues. So again, just thanking you for that, and really with I again just sort of the people feeling alone. A friend texted me the other day just sort of like, this is a lonely fight, and that's why I wanted to bring that up about, we are the majority, because if we can take the courage to take those small steps, that can snowball and into our families, our communities, and the rest of the state. So I appreciate those thoughts there, and probably not going to get to everything on my list, but one other thing that's important here in South Dakota, and it's related to also eating and food and health, which I know is dear to your heart. But here in South Dakota, beef production, cattle is a big part of our economy in our state, and seems to be a segment of people in the world that think that cows are a cause of lots of issues and problems in our world. So I thought maybe you would have some comments on that.
It's a great question. I'm pretty uneducated on that. And by the way, beef, it's my favorite food. So whoever thinks cows are bad, like, shame on you. Like, what kind of conspiracy theory are you running? So, yeah, man, I love cows.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Especially when I'm eating them.
Yeah, I just, again, want to make a point of just bringing up issues that are important in our state here, and people that are kind of moving here because we're a great economy and have lots of good things going on here. I just want them to understand what things are important to us and make sure that they're not going to just come in and take those things away. So what message would you have for South Dakotans? I want this to be, there's a lot of JP out there, but I'd like to bring something that to South Dakotans that they can enjoy, and if you want to close with that, and I'd appreciate that.
Sure, man. Well, sometimes a fish doesn't know it's swimming in water because that's all the fish has ever known. So one thing in the day that I've been here in South Dakota, my first trip, one thing I want you to know is you live in a beautiful world, beautiful land. And if you've been here your whole life, you might be that fish swimming in water, not knowing how blessed you are to live in this beautiful place. And I know, Peter, how beautiful it is, unless you're doing the work you're doing to keep the beauty and keep South Dakota amazing. So you're lucky. You're not only lucky, you're blessed, and you're doing something right. You keep this place looking amazing. So, and I love the idea, like when there's guests coming over to your home, they got to play by your rules. So when people are coming into South Dakota, I live in Texas. We have this thing, about Californians coming in. I mean, they pretty much ruin everywhere they go. They try to. So we have a thing about educating them when they come into our state. It's like, shit, I'm all for the border wall, especially a border wall at the border of New Mexico to keep the Californian immigrants out. But Yeah, you've got such a beautiful way of life. And I think spreading the values that South Dakotans have is a great thing, because those values are part of what allows this place to stay beautiful and respected.
Very good. Well, I'll just close a couple more good lines that you shared with us this evening. And again, you mentioned with us 100% of people being born into freedom, and you just said freedom is our true nature. So I really appreciate that. And then just maybe close with your line. You know, the world needs more boldness right now. So it doesn't matter how big or small a thing it is. If there's something that, again, that is in your heart or your gut that you just know you have to do, let's stand up and do that. And I think our children and future generations will thank us for it. So JP, thank you so much. I really appreciate this time, and come back and see us again.
I'd love to. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate you having me on.